Welcome, everybody, to our special edition of our Thursday afternoon webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's a John Maxwell Mastermind, and doing the training today is one of our great coaches, Robin Marshall. She was also certified with John Maxwell, and she'll be leading us through the Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. Just a little bit of, if you have a question or we ask for some responses, you can raise your hand. Also at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat opportunity. You can type your questions in there. We have 5 or 6 of us from our team that are beyond today, and so we can take your questions as Robin's going through the presentation. And then at the end, we'll also have an opportunity to take additional questions. So without any further ado, Robin, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, JB. Good afternoon, everybody. That was a great introduction, and I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Robin Marshall, and it's my privilege to spend the next 30 minutes with you speaking on the topic that has changed my life, which is why I'm so passionate about it, and I want to share this with you, and that is the topic of personal growth. Each one of you in this webinar is unique. Do you want to be a better person tomorrow than you are today? Growing yourself daily guarantees that you will be better than you were the day before. Now, before we dive into personal growth and making ourselves better, 30 minutes is definitely not enough time to deep dive into every facet of personal growth. You see, earlier today, I did a Google search on personal growth, and guess how many entries I found on Google? 44.5 million entries just on personal growth. So let me be clear with you right now up front. There's probably no way we can get through all of that in the next 30 minutes, but what we learned today is going to be extremely valuable. So with that many entries on the topic of personal growth, I think the best way for us to begin is by going straight to the top of the personal growth guru charts. One of my mentors happens to be at the top of that list, and he's written several New York Times best-selling books on leadership and personal growth. His name is Dr. John C. Maxwell. His book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, is one of those New York Times bestsellers, and it's an outstanding must-have resource that I recommend you add to your library to help reach your full potential. We will spend the rest of our time together exploring 2 of John's 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. The 2 laws we're going to cover today are the law of pain and the law of the rubber band. Now, these 2 laws are important aspects of your personal growth because the law of pain tells us that we will all experience growing pains, life lessons requiring some form of pain management. And how we handle these painful moments affects our growth. In the law of the rubber band, in order for you to grow to your full potential, you have to stretch beyond your current comfort zone. And remember that stretching grows our athletic muscles and our personal growth muscles as well. All right, everybody, are you ready to grow? Let's get started. Today, we're going to start on the law of pain. And the law of pain says that good management of bad experiences leads to great growth and is necessary. This law is a tough pill to swallow for many because pain is something we naturally avoid. But this law is about teaching you and I how to turn our bad experiences into positive steps leading to our success. Now, John Maxwell quotes John McDowell in his chapter on the law of pain, saying, every problem introduces a person to himself. So let's think about that. Every problem introduces a person to himself. The bottom line is with this law is that everyone has bad experiences. We can't avoid them. Some of us run from them. Some do whatever little bit they can to deal with them, and others embrace them. No matter what, we still can't avoid them. The last in that group Those who embrace are the people, the leaders who choose to learn from difficult and very challenging experiences. You know, I remember the first time I spoke at a conference and I had planned everything out. I'd been rehearsing. I was doing great. I got to the point where I was standing up there and I was there for 5 minutes and I was telling a story, and all of a sudden I went blank. I started sweating. My body was shaking and I didn't know what to do. And I could tell that the people in the audience sensed my hesitation. It was a pretty painful situation, to say the least. But fortunately, I remembered and switched my story that I knew really well. It took me a few seconds, and after I told the story, I was able to get back on track and finish what I was talking about. But from that point on, if I thought I had rehearsed enough, I rehearsed more. I bet some of you have felt that too. Now, we all have bad experiences, and you've heard the saying that life is filled with ups and downs. Well, the problem is most of us just want ups and ups. We do everything in our power to avoid bad situations, yet they will always find us. It's hard taking it one day at a time when you feel like the day just attacked you all at once, right? And it's true that no one likes bad experiences, but if you learn to manage your bad experiences well, then you get something good out of them. Plus, you have great war stories to tell. So many people take this should have, would have, or could have path when dealing with bad experiences. Now consider some of the types of pain that we face. Number one, the pain of incompetence. Oh, I should have seen that coming. Or the pain of financial loss. If I could only get that back. Or possibly the pain of not being number one. I would be better at the top if it wasn't for that person or whatever. Or last but not least is the pain of change. What are they doing? I mean, come on, they should have listened to me. Now, we know that very few people, quite honestly, can take positive experiences from bad experiences. Many people become bitter from having bad experiences over and over. Few people become better, but I want to help you find ways to become better. Now, what I've just shared with you are a few examples of what John Maxwell calls your pain files. The pain of incompetence, the pain of not being number one, and so on. But just because we have our pains in files like these doesn't mean we should ignore them. We keep our files so we can remember and grow from our experiences, such as these, to look back on or even to refer to. Remember, we need to turn our pains into gains. Now, we do this by choosing a positive life stance. Well, so what does that mean? We need to look for the positive lesson in every experience. There is always something positive, but you may not see it at the time of that experience. When you live your life with a positive life stance, you find that the good will become better and the bad will not be as bad as it seemed in the moment. Now, this doesn't mean that you're going to live through rose-colored glasses and in the clouds. But what it's saying is, if you take a different perspective, you can change the way you look at things down the road. So one way is to embrace and develop our creativity. Neil Walsh says life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So use the gift of a bad experience to open your mind and challenge yourself to use your own brilliant creativity. Embrace the value of your bad experience. Remember, you have a choice. You can look at your bad life experience and be set back from it or learn from them. Now, it's been said in life that there are winners and there are losers. But you know, honestly, when it comes to the final score of a sporting event, I would say, especially for leaders, there are winners and there are learners. One of the biggest pushes we get going forward from bad experiences is making good changes after learning from bad experiences. And remember, a bend in the road is not the end of the road, of course, unless you forget to take the turn. So what happens to us is rarely the end of the road. However, many of us focus on our feelings. Remember that, on our feelings about what has happened to us, rather than focusing on our thoughts and actions that will lead us in a better direction. So the next time you're faced with a bad experience, remind yourself that you are on the cusp of change. Check your emotions and use them to be a catalyst for change and growth, not for them to paralyze you. So let's lead it. And what does that mean? Let me give you just one more thing to think about related to this law that's directly connected to leadership. In other words, how do we lead from the law of pain, and how do you apply this law specifically to your life? Applying this law specifically to your life looks like this. And there are several questions that you could explore, but in this limited time, I want to give you a few things to think about. I've got a few questions, and I want you to write those down. And when you're done here, I want you to think about these things. How do you deal with pain? Do you do anything and everything possible to avoid pain at all levels? Or do you endure it since you know you have to get through it some way or another? Or do you work to embrace it and remain positive despite having bad experiences? We all know people that do all of these things, don't we? And honestly, we may be some of those people. Now, thinking about where you are on the spectrum of how you view bad experiences can guide you in taking great advantage of growing from such pain. We know that getting an understanding of what has happened and recognizing the emotions you have because of these experiences is the start to creating a positive action going forward. So there can be many different pathways going forward, and here are just a few things that you can do. Get input from others. Understand your emotions. Identify a specific desired change that you want to have. Think about what positive change you can influence either in yourself and or in other people. But above all, remember that personal growth requires action. If you haven't been acting when a bad experience happens, then you're simply avoiding. Personal growth requires action. It's as simple and as difficult as that. So don't let another painful experience go by without learning and growing from it. Okay, so now let's look at another one of my favorite laws. I have to admit, this is my favorite one. It's called the law of the rubber band. And the thesis for this law is growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. Now, if I were to ask you the question, do you want to grow? How would you respond? I am hoping and I truly believe that it would be a huge yes. Yes, I want to grow. But the truth of the matter is this. Most of us avoid any form of pressure because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. You see, we've been taught that comfort is a place to be desired and strived for. Let me introduce you to a new thought. All living things grow, and that growth requires stretching. John says true life begins at the end of our comfort zone, and we arrive there by stretching. So think of this. You would not be where you are today without some form of tension or stretching taking place. For many, the thought is, when I graduate from high school or college, I've arrived, and I can now stop being stretched. I mean, after all, I've grown up, right? I think the truth is that we should continue growing throughout our lives. But with growth comes discomfort and initially pain. What we felt in school was the tension to do enough to get that diploma. Now, we can describe it as the tension between where you were and where you wanted to be, couldn't we? So what did you do? You just did enough to get by, right? We were done. I mean, where in the world are we ever going to use all of that math and all of that history? One of my favorite quotes of all times: God's gift to us is potential, and our gift to God is developing it. So how do we do that? Well, here it is. It's quite simple. By getting out of our comfort zone, or in other words, out of our own way, by continually stretching not only physically, but emotionally, intellectually, and even spiritually. You know, John gives us 7 benefits to tension, and I want to share them with you, but I will have to give you a quick overview. So let's start with this. Number 1, few people ever want to be stretched. It's literally like saying to your employer, I know I'm overqualified, but I promise to only do half of my ability. Most people use only a fraction of their ability and rarely, if ever, try to reach their full potential. Did you know that only 32% of the US population has ever walked into a bookstore? That's a pretty alarming statistic. But a lot of times we are not willing to read or learn or grow. And my question to you is, when was the last time you learned something new for the first time? Number 2, settling for the status quo. You know, most people are satisfied to settle into the comfort zone of life, falling into familiar patterns and habits they've learned from those around them. Being in the comfort zone may feel good and feel safe, but it will lead to ultimate dissatisfaction. It takes real courage to push yourself outside your comfort zone. Number 3, stretching is an inside job. The real process of growth begins within your thoughts. Those thoughts then become words, and those words become actions. James Allen says you cannot travel within and stand still without. Well, think about it. All life except mankind grows to its full potential. It's only mankind that gets in the way of the process. Here's a great example. How tall will a tree grow? Well, a tree doesn't decide to stop growing. It continues growing its whole life. This inside job is an internal measurement that allows you to evaluate where you are against what you are capable of. Number 4, stretching always requires change. Change is always a challenge because it propels us out of a place of comfort. Just a couple of real truths, let me share them with you. You can't improve and avoid change at the same time. We must stop looking over our shoulder at what was and start focusing on what is. You know, I find it interesting that you usually will not find a successful person who isn't restless in some way or some form or fashion. You know, George Eliot quotes, "It is never too late to be what you might have been." If you're still satisfied with what you did 5 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, you are not growing. Number 5, stretching sets you apart from others. Have you noticed that people seem to have become satisfied with just being mediocre? This is about a personal concession to be less than your best. Who chooses that? I just find it so interesting that excellent seems to be further and further away from the accepted norms of society. Now remember, I didn't say perfect. Excellent and significance is very valuable. Successful people set themselves apart from the crowd by going over and above what others do. As you stretch and get better, you will be able to affect and infect others who will follow your lead, and everyone will become better. as a result. Number 6, stretching can become a lifestyle. When you stop stretching, you stop growing and perhaps even stop other things in some ways. I, for one, am going to continue stretching and growing as long as I'm on this earth. There's no place for me to personally to stop and rest on my behind, because all living things continue to grow, and it only happens by being stretched. So make stretching yourself a daily routine. Number 7, stretching gives you a shot at significance. You see, if you are going to grow yourself, you must first know yourself. Know who you are. What is between the gap of good and great? Could it be that our ability to close the gap is directly related to our willingness to be stretched? Who are you having a positive impact on today? Who is it that you have intentionally invested in today that is making a difference in them and in you? Now, John Maxwell says, I want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference, at a time that makes a difference, with people who make a difference. People who are committed to stretching themselves will make a difference. The real bottom line on the law of the rubber band is this: are you always looking for a better way to do what you already do? And if you are, then you need to know ahead of time that it will stretch you out of your comfort zone and propel you into your desired future. The law of the rubber band may be my favorite law, because as I live it out, I'm never the same, and I know that I get better. So let's review this. The 2 invaluable laws of growth that we've covered today are this: the law of pain. Good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. We all have bad experiences, and they're unavoidable. How we deal with them will either grow us or slow us. The second law is the law of the rubber band. Growing to your full potential requires stretching out of your comfort zone. And to make a difference, you must stretch yourself. So as you all know, we have only scratched the surface on 2 of the 15 invaluable laws of growth. But imagine doing a deeper dive into these laws in a small group setting. Better yet, imagine what would happen if you and your organization took a deeper dive into these laws. We have a great opportunity for each of you to join a small group setting starting on Wednesday, March 18th. And as you can see here, we have a link that you can go to, and you will also receive some information from JB at the end of this webinar. And remember, you can click on register now for your opportunity to grow to your full potential. So I'd like to open it up right now for some questions, if there are any.
Robin, I don't see any questions at the moment, but everyone on the call, I did just send you a link that will take you to what Robin mentioned as far as signing up for that small, intimate group going over the 15 invaluable laws of growth. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please put it in your chat at this point. If not, we will let you have a rest of your Thursday. And we thank you so very much for attending this webinar with us today.
Thank you all very much. It was a pleasure. Have a great rest of your day.